Gentleman from St. Mary's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I got an amendment at the desk. Amendment number 383125/1.
Amendment number 1.
So be considered reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, we talk a lot about that. You know, Kirwan does many things well out into the future. But if you had a child in the school system right now, what are we doing to help them? Now, I don't dispute that what's in the future is important. But when I talk to educators, when I talk to parents, you know, there's a chronic problem throughout our state. It deals with disruptive students. Disruptive students in the classroom are a huge problem. Now, I'm not talking about like, you know, talking out of turn, passing notes. I'm talking about chronic disruption, yelling, arguing, fighting, even assaulting the teacher and other students. This is a big problem. And we want to help teachers. We want to help teachers do their job, and giving them a higher salary may be a priority in this legislation, but it does nothing to help the students that are actually in the classroom. I have a bill at the desk, or amendment at the desk. This amendment will allow teachers to remove chronically disruptive students from their classroom, place them in an alternative education arrangement to this such that it's approved by the teacher. Before reintroducing the child back into the classroom, the teacher would have to gain permission. We have a big problem in our school system. I think a lot of principals force some of these requirements on their teachers, and this puts teachers back in power of their classroom. And with that, Madam Speaker, I move the amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, this bill provides for equitable education across the board. This bill provides for behavioral health services for all of our students. It provides for restorative practices, for training for our teachers and in our classrooms. It provides for trauma-informed training in our classrooms. It provides for wraparound services for our students at risk. This bill is in front of the Ways and Means Committee, and we're considering it. However, there are multiple people opposed to this bill as it is in our committee. There's Advocates for Children and Youth, Anne Arundel Public Schools, Coalition for Reform of School Discipline, Montgomery County Public Schools, MABE, all oppose this bill. And I'm sure it's not the intent of the gentleman when he proposes this bill, but these types of bills provide for more biases in our school system when it comes to discipline matters. When you send our kids outside the classroom, they get into all types of things that it could lead to the school to prison pipeline. What this bill does is encourages the school to prison pipeline. It encourages it, it adds to it. It's a real thing in the state of Maryland. And we talk about what are we providing students right now? The delegate actually voted for a bill to provide for more training for restorative approaches in our schools. It's working in multiple schools around this state. I urge the body to resist this amendment because what it does is it ensures that we have and continue to have a school to prison pipeline in the state of Maryland. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, as a father of 3 children in elementary, middle, and high school, I hear multiple stories every day. And with all due respect to my colleague from Prince George County, I'm not sure how to say it, but that was the weakest argument I've ever heard about a bill or an amendment, because we do have a problem in the classroom. Teachers are begging us. They want to be able to teach. The stories that I hear, that every one of us hear, if you talk to parents, they tell you that every single story, and we're not talking about people passing notes or yelling, we're talking about children abusing teachers physically and verbally, and they have absolutely no say-so in whether that child can come back to the classroom or not. This is about safety. So if you care about teachers' safety, you would vote for this. And it doesn't provide a pipeline to prison. It actually provides a pipeline to recovery. That's what this amendment will do. I have emails from teachers, and I'm going to read you quickly one that it says he's a teacher in Anne Arundel County, and he is against the Blueprint of Maryland, and he's saying, I don't need any money. I need to have safety and the ability to do and run my classroom and do my job. Again, those are children that are not really doing well in the classroom, and we continue to send them back. And if we continue to send them back, then yes, you will create a pipeline to prison. So if you care again about the safety of our teachers, you will pass this amendment. Thank you.
Gentleman from Talbot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Real quickly, I know you've heard a lot about this. We're talking about changing the direction in education and improving the environment within our schools. I don't know which teachers everyone in this room has been talking to. I know the ones that I've spoken with have said this is their #1 issue. And we'll be talking all day about a lot of different things and a lot of factors, a lot of money. Everybody wants to talk about the money. But when you get into the schools and you talk to the teachers, the administrators, the parents, the kids, a lot of them are watching today. This is your amendment. I'm voting for it. I support it. And I appreciate the maker for bringing it.
Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to speak today to the amendment by reading a letter that was sent to me from a teacher from Baltimore County Public Schools. When I was teaching 10th grade English in Baltimore County Public Schools, I had a student who was frequently disruptive in class. One day he was not in class, and the daily attendance report said he had been suspended to the board. I asked the secretary what he did. I was told he tried to rape a girl in the school building. In speaking with the coworker who taught the girl, I found out that the girl's arm was broken in the attack. My thinking was that I would never see the student again. To my shock and surprise, the student returned to my class at the beginning of the next quarter. I approached the principal but got no information, except he was at the school on special permission, meaning we were not his home school. The survivor of the assault was still in the school, and I asked my coworker who taught the girl how the scenario was possible. I could not understand how a student who attempted to rape a girl, breaking her arm in the process, was able to return to the same school as the survivor, especially since he was at the school on special permission. My coworker told me that the girl's family were persuaded not to file charges. One reason was to maintain the school's reputation for when the girl applied to colleges. In my 33 years teaching, I witnessed numerous incidents that would have resulted in arrests if taken place outside the school. As the TAPCO representative, I was approached by teachers who had been assaulted. In most cases, the teacher was essentially told not to file charges. I think this problem is very real, and I don't think we want to create a school-to-prison pipeline, but I do think that we need alternatives for students who are just wrecking the classroom. And I think the appropriate way to do that is to empower teachers and give them back control of the classroom so that not only can we provide great educational opportunities for the rest of the class, but we can give the students who need the attention they need. I'd be happy to support the amendment.
Madam Speaker.
The subcommittee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am a teacher. And I think if you take a student and throw them out of your class, first of all, you violated IDEA. Okay, that's the first thing. But it's a federal law, right? Thank you. If you don't know what that is, it's a federal law. Thank you, yes. But really, philosophically, if you throw a student out of your class so that they can't learn anymore, you've failed that student. You can do better. And there are lots of ways to do better. And some of these anecdotal stories I hear about teachers who cannot deal with the situation, those teachers need help. They need professional development to learn how to do restorative practices with students and allow them to understand and come back into the classroom. Let's not abandon kids. because they have a problem with behavior. Let's help them. And that's why I would resist this amendment, because this would abandon a number of students.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from town, Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And when I was delivering my address on my amendment, I was fearful of running in violation of talking off subject on the amendment. But let me just finish my comment on this, because teachers want their classroom back. And you'll remember me saying that earlier. And let me just say to you that education is an entitlement. In our country, every child is entitled to have an education. And I understand that. But it's also a privilege to be in this country and to wake up in the morning and to be able to come into a classroom with a teacher that loves their children and give them a great education for the day. This entitlement and this federal law that you're talking about, I understand and I get. But listen to the teachers. It's not anecdotal. It's essential to the issue that we have today in education, is that teachers cannot walk into the classroom in the morning, wake up, smile, and say to a group of 30 students, here we are today, how much can we get accomplished? What's happening in practice on the Eastern Shore, in Baltimore City, Montgomery, Prince George's County, throughout our state of Maryland, is that teachers instead are babysitters. The behavior problems are being entitled because they know they can't be removed from the classroom. The teacher knows that they don't get support from the administration. The teacher needs to be held harmless in this. The teacher needs to be able to teach. The students who are in the classroom who want to learn should be able to learn. End of conversation. End of conversation. If we can, in the state of Maryland, stand up firmly, if you think it's a federal law that we're violating, stand up firmly and say to our federal partners, fix this. Not because we're trying to create an anecdotal conversation about what is and is not happening in a classroom, but what is happening in every classroom in our state of Maryland. Stand with the teachers. We don't need to spend $32 billion in the state of Maryland to fix this. What we need to do is listen to the rank and file teachers. What is it do they need? They want to deliver their passion, why they went to college, why they spent the years learning what it is to do, why as a child they wanted to be a teacher to begin with. Honor their reason for showing up in the classroom by giving them a classroom for which they can teach students. I firmly believe in this, and I will tell you that I said just as much in Dorchester County in a Chamber of Commerce, and I had a handful of teachers who bought a table at that meeting and came up to me afterwards and said, Chris, you could not be more correct. That we need to be able to go into a classroom without fearing for ourselves, but more importantly, can I please go to the classroom and go through an 8-hour day and teach students that want to be taught? We're not talking about expelling students here. We are talking about saying to a behavior problem, there needs to be an intervention. And maybe they're not getting that intervention at home, but part of the privilege of going into a public education system is that we do know how to fix this. There needs to be consequences for bad behavior. The state of Maryland can and should stand with the educators to make sure that these are learning lessons for those that violate basic social principles living amongst their peers. And that they can't get away with that. What's happening in the classroom right now is that they're getting the exact opposite. They're understanding that their behavior problems can't be fixed with our system, and that therefore they're going to push that line farther and farther and farther, because it's what a child does when there are no barriers. There are no consequences. Support the amendment, not because you're worried about a federal law, but rather because you're going to stand up for teachers, their profession, their passion. Do the right thing. Thank you, Madam
Majority
Speaker.
Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To be clear, education is not a privilege, It's a right. Under the Maryland Constitution, it's a right. And the federal law that's being referred to, just to clarify, is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which says that it is a civil right for kids with disabilities to have access to a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. Before that passage of that law, or the predecessor to that law, 3/4 of kids with disabilities in America did not attend school at all. We have agreed as a nation that the ability of a kid with a disability to get an education is a basic civil right. And this legislature has, on a bipartisan basis, worked for years to guarantee that that civil right is upheld. Under this amendment, there are no protections for kids with disabilities. It says if a kid disrupts the classroom and the ability of a teacher to communicate with their students, they can be sent out and they can't return until the teacher says it's okay. There are plenty of disabilities, autism among them, for example, where kids who have that disability will give off verbalizations. Could a teacher say, oh, that kid's giving off verbalizations, I'm going to send them out, they're not allowed back? Under this amendment, they could. Everybody on this floor is concerned about making sure our schools are safe. It's why, on a bipartisan basis, we created the Maryland Center for School Safety. It's why, on a bipartisan basis, we've worked hard to try to identify new ways to support our teachers and administrators in providing behavior interventions for students. It's why this legislature led the way nationally in requiring implementation of things like positive behavior intervention and supports and restorative practices. But at the end of the day, this amendment will not make any kids safer. It will violate their civil rights. So I'm casting a red vote because I believe that our kids deserve their civil rights to be upheld. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Talbot.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll just be real quick and follow up on the debate. I'm dealing with some issues right now. I mean, if this is the law right now, I'm dealing with that exact case currently, trying to help a student who has run into problems because of some issues that he has. So I don't know how that necessarily changes if this amendment goes forward. But what I'd like to advocate to everybody in the chamber is not so much the teacher's perspective, but the student's perspective and what we're teaching our kids. You know, they're going through school and they're learning they can get away with virtually anything. And all this amendment seeks to do is to create a wall, a barrier, so the kids learn. The problems that are created by not having consequences, we see in other forms as they get older. And I don't want to change this debate into that debate, but this amendment is about the kids. It's to help the kids. It's not to hurt the kids. Nobody wants to hurt the kids. This is to help them. They need the discipline. So support this amendment. It's good for kids.
Madam Speaker, amendment.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to clear up some of the fear-mongering going on in the chamber right now. Yeah, we had a claim this is going to violate civil rights. We're going to increase kids going school to prison pipeline, and it violates federal law. Well, the truth is we pulled this amendment and legislation. This is already law in Texas. This is modeled after Texas legislation, and it is endorsed by their teachers union. So let's talk about what we're doing. Let's just simply read the amendment that's going to cause all these violations of civil rights and sending kids to prison and then a bunch of other fearful things. Let's look at page 2 of the amendment. D, teacher can send the student to the principal. That doesn't seem that bad. The teacher can send a student to the principal's office, and the principal's office can put the student in another classroom. Well, wow, that's horrible. The teacher can, the principal can then place the student in school suspension. Not so bad. They can put them in an alternative program. They can limit their after-school activities. And then the heart of the amendment, a principal may not return a student to the teacher's classroom without consent of the teacher unless the principal, guidance counselor, and teacher jointly determine returning the student to the classroom is the best or only alternative situation or availability. That, my friends, has caused rhetoric in here to violate civil rights, send kids to prison, and violate federal law. That's just not accurate. This is a good amendment. This empowers teachers to take back control of their classroom, and it's just, saying anything different is just misleading. With that, Madam Speaker, I'll press the amendment.
Madam Speaker.
The Chairwoman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the Majority Leader for pointing out that we weren't just talking about some federal law, but I certainly can't match his passion in regarding free and appropriate public education, one of the most important bills our Congress has ever passed in regards to education. I do want to simply address part of what the gentleman, the maker of the amendment, just said, that we should read his amendment and know that it's not doing all those things, though we all know well enough that it is violating federal law, and more than that, it's violating what we all believe matters to our kids and ensuring that all kids get a real chance. But I would say, if you worry about school discipline, don't just read his amendment, read the bill. This is the bill that's going to help all students, disruptive students, and all the others who are not. Thank you very much. I urge the body to reject this amendment.
Gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'll try not to drag this debate on even further, but we've heard from spouses of teachers, we've heard from teachers, we've heard from concerned parents, but we haven't heard from a student that would have been classified as disruptive. How y'all doing? So it should be no surprise that I probably was a bad student in high school, and there was no deterrence. I wasn't afraid of getting suspended because I could sign my mother's name and I had a day off. In-school suspension didn't bother me because I sat in the dressing room behind the auditorium by myself and did whatever I wanted. And I ate lunch with the custodians, whom, by the way, I learned more about life from than most of my teachers in school. But what I had to do as an adult is when I knocked on doors, I ran into my teachers from school who enlightened me on life with me in their classroom. And it made me realize that I was really disruptive. I couldn't focus. I couldn't pay attention like everybody else. I was bored. And so I did whatever I wanted. And I get up, walk out, kind of like I do here. But if it's not this amendment that's going to help teachers with students like me, then what is? I don't need to yell to get my point across and berate. I'm just speaking as somebody who lived that life and probably still does in some ways. But I've noticed in dealing with my own children in schools that there's just nothing there for teachers. When I knock on the doors of my teachers and I hear about the way I treated them, if there was some more of a deterrent than what they had at the time, who knows how things would have turned out for me. Maybe I would have went to college and not had to work with my hands my entire life. You know, the things that happen in the classroom have a true effect on the rest of your life. And so if it's not this, then what? And if it's not now, then when? And so I'm just going to leave it at that.
Madam
Gentleman
Speaker.
from Montgomery.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move the previous question.
Question for the House is to move the previous question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No.
Roll call, Madam Speaker.
This is the roll call on the previous question.
I removed my motion. Thank you. I was confused.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. No. On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no.
Roll call, Madam Speaker. Roll call.
Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. Amendment fails. Are there any other amendments?